Welcome back to Miguel Zakova Show with me, Miguel Zakova. And then we're going to talk about Inazuma 11 again with Inazuma 11 Go, Chrono Stones. This season is literally insane, so we're just going to dive right into it. After another edit by yours truly, of course.
Fly like a butterfly. Fly like a butterfly. Fly like a butterfly. Fly like a butterfly.
That's nice. Wild and wonderful.
Felt like a fly, like a butterfly.
Inazuma 11 Go, Chrono Stones follows the events of the first season of Go, where Tenma and the gang win the Holy Road Tournament, and Raimon has once again become the best in Japan. After returning to school for summer vacation, Tenma notices something off about Raimon. There is no soccer club room. Even more than that, all his teammates are in other clubs, him having apparently been in the calligraphy club the entire time. Tenma, confused at all of this, begins to wonder what happened while he's been gone. So a mysterious boy named Alpha appears, because that he's part of an organization from the future known as El Dorado, who have been erasing soccer from history. Tenma being the last member of Raimon to remember the sport. Before completing his objective, Alpha is interrupted by another boy from the future known as Faye Rune, and his unusual robot companion, Clark Wonderbot, who help protect Tenma and initiate the revolution to prevent soccer from being erased entirely. However, the story doesn't go that easily, because after being Alpha in his Supreme Protocol Omega like 4 times, and his friends' memories back, El Dorado changes the team up with a new leader, Beta, who makes them realize they can't just power their way through these guys. The team losing the match against this new Protocol Omega, losing Endo, and half the team is brainwashed to quit again, so things are bad. This leads Tenma and all the Keshin users on the team, plus Faye, go into the future to find a book with important info written by a guy named Master D, who's just Endo's granddad, Daisuke. Them meeting up with him in the past where he tells them the purpose of the book, which is to outline his dream of the 11 strong soccer players in history. Send the team on a quest across all of time and space to find the 11 people who would qualify Daisuke's descriptions. But Tenma and friends don't just find 11 new people to play with. The series instead introduces a brand new mechanic known as Miximax, which is basically a fusion to allow our already existing players to gain the traits outlined in the book. People they meet range from real-life figures such as the Great Unifier of Japan, Oda Nobunaga, to dinosaurs, to storybook characters, to literal weather phenomenon. Like, what do you mean the final member of your strongest team comes from someone fusing with a storm? They also introduce Keshin Arm, which turns the Keshin to Sanctay armor. It's kind of cool, but it's almost entirely unnecessary if I were being real with you, at least in the anime. It's probably really cool in the game. If you haven't noticed, that was a rather longer plot description than normal, because it takes the show about 11 episodes to even get into a status quo. And the thing that sucks the most about that is that it might have been at its best when it didn't have one, and also at the very end, but we'll talk about that later. It's about how interesting and crazy seeing our cast go to different time periods is, it gets kind of played out really fast. Like, you watch one arc where they go to the past, you've kind of seen them all. The gang goes through whatever time period, they bum around, they meet the person that whoever the arc is focused on is going to fuse with. The second episode will feature some random match. The third episode will have most of the actual story, include the start of the important match of the arc. And the fourth episode is the Mixed Max debut and the end of the match. For them, it gets even worse once you realize that outside of one character, all of this development kind of goes nowhere. Like, it's cool to see Tenma become more confident being a captain due to the advice of King Arthur. Yes, they beat King Arthur, but not like they go anywhere with that plot point that makes this arc necessary to happen. Again, it's not bad, but character development just for character development's sake isn't too interesting in a show as a story at these moments should be contributing to. The big reason for this issue is the team itself, sadly. Strongest 11 history, or Chrono Storm as they're probably called, end up being made up of 6 members of Raimon from the past season. The 4 faces of Go, who all kind of got their character development last season. A lot of these arcs are like pretty much just a repeat of those arcs from the first season. Like, Tenma staying with King Arthur is very reminiscent of the stuff he goes through during the Dragon Link match. And that doesn't make it bad per se, but it's like very repetitive, and like with how short it is, it kind of feels like they're not really going in any like real new direction for it, especially in the terms of this story and its themes and messages. Like, it could have not happened and the final arc would have been the same, and like it hits even harder with the other 3 since they have like less importance because they're not the main character like Tenma is. You know, Tsurugi's a little bit better because he has like that arc very early on with his like brother, who because of like timeline issues, they're trapped in a world where Tsurugi's brother Yuichi can actually like walk and play soccer, but because of that, Tsurugi had to give up soccer, that way Yuichi can play overseas, become a better soccer player. Yuichi decided to give up living in a world where he can walk again, if it means Tsurugi can go back to playing soccer. And they have like this cool little moment where they play this like last game of kick around again, and then like Yuichi does a mix match with Tsurugi. It's like really emotional type stuff I wish was in these like little arcs or whatever, because like even though that doesn't really come back up again, because like Tsurugi and Yuichi's relationship, it feels a lot more important and impactful, and you don't really get that when like Shindo meets Oda Nobunaga, who we will never see again, and it's like a person that he has no real connection to outside of whatever lesson that he taught him during that arc. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, but talking about the other members who are from Raimon, we got two characters who I did not talk about in the first video because, well, they're important here and I didn't really have anything to say. We have Ryoma, who, you know, showed up a little late into the first season. I don't really have anything to say, but this season improved my opinion about him a lot. I really love how much of like a meathead he is. He has some of like the funniest moments in this season, but he also is sadly an example of a character who doesn't really grow during his like you know, going to the past arc, because the fact that, like, you know, his relationship with Ryoma Sakamoto is a lot more for the benefit of Ryoma Sakamoto's development as a character. You know, again, we will never see him again. And then you have Kirino, a character who I thought was pretty boring, him just being Shindo's second in command. To the credit of this season, they do try to develop him a little bit more by showing his like feeling of inadequacy compared to Shindo, which compares to John the Arc, who also feels inadequate as like a leader in her own right. And then, you know, it kind of works with them, like, you know, relating to each other like issues, and like leads to Kirino's Mixing Max at the exact same time. That's definitely the arc where I figured out, wow, these are kind of boring and kind of do feel like they go nowhere, because Kirino definitely goes to the background a lot more than a lot of these other characters after his arc is done. After them, you have a popular character from the last season who doesn't get a lot of screen time, so that it should be different depending on what version of the video game you played. If you played the I don't remember the names, the red version, you have Taiyo. If you pick the green version, you have Hakuryu. Thankfully, the anime picked the much better choice of Taiyo, but his arc isn't exactly the best either, to be honest. Like, his relevance, again, begins and ends in the arc that he shows up to join the team for, and he really doesn't get to do anything after that. Not to mention, to have Taiyo on the team, they just take away his illness, i.e. the thing that makes his character really interesting. Like, sure, they do have an arc of him being scared that his body will just end up failing on him again, but like with all the others, it definitely stops existing after his Mixing Max arc, which sucks, because, like, you know, having a little bit of arc of him like struggling with his like body throughout the show probably would have been really cool to see, but nah, because he has an alternate of a character who has an entirely different personality and struggle than him, we don't really get to see that at all. It sucks even more because, like, based off what I've seen from the video game, I got some of the coolest stuff in his kit, bruh. He has 2 Keshins, does 2 Keshin arms, he has a lot of like cool little moves and stuff, but for some reason, we know why, because they wanted to show off stuff from the video games in the movie. Hayo only gets to use even just his like Mixie Max move in the movie. We don't get to see Hechi Raime, this like cool like thunder based move, which looks so hard in the video game and in the movie, to be fair. Outside of the movie, he just does kicks in the anime, bruh. It sucks. Hate it. After Tayo, you get the 4 new characters who actually are where things pick up a lot for this cast and show in general. Not in the case of Torb though, who's just here as roster filler. He's like caveman guy, if you want to ask. Like, you ever watch Beyblade Metal Fury? You remember the guy with the purple Beyblade who's the final member of the 4 Season Bladers? That's Torb in Turn of Chrono Storm. Have you ever watched Kamen Rider Saber? You remember the time swordsman Durandal? That's Torb in Turn of Chrono Storm. I'm hating though. I actually like Torb. He just kind of doesn't get to do anything. The other 3 though, Faye, Kanako, and Senark, aren't like that. So let's talk about them. Faye is pretty much the face of Chrono Stone. They got your last team to travel across time. Despite his importance, we don't get to learn anything about him for the longest time. Him just being a nice guy who wants to protect soccer. Even when Kanako, a character very important to his story, is introduced, you don't get any real hints about him. That's until the dinosaur arc, where after watching a baby dinosaur get its mother killed, Faye starts to relate as he's an orphan himself. But like this dinosaur who got his parents taken away from him, Faye was abandoned by his dad, left in an orphanage with nothing but a doll. A doll he grew to hate as it reminded him of his father. Faye refuses to use his Keshin due to it looking exactly the same as that doll. But after Kanako tells him to stop holding back, Faye finally decides to bring it out, but then immediately asks himself, why does this random girl know about my Keshin? Also, where did she come from? Because Kanako was really introduced after the Oda Nobunaga arc in the John D. Arc as having just always been on the team, according to everyone who didn't go on the trip, which definitely is suspicious or makes you question things about her character. And unlike a lot of other stuff in the season, this actually gets to go somewhere. As we see Faye being continuously weirded out by Kanako's actions after this point, until we finally learn everything about Faye in the final arc against the organization Fada. As we learned that, despite everything, Eldorado aren't totally the villains in all of this, as the only reason they've been trying to destroy soccer is the descendants of great soccer players from the past eventually become mutants as the second stage children that are now trying to destroy the world due to the years of oppression by North people. The leader is this guy named Saru Evans, who just so happens to bear an uncanny resemblance to Tenma. This will be important later. Upon seeing Saru, Faye begins to act really weird, which is where we eventually find out that Faye has had his memories wiped the entire time, as he was originally a member of Fada sent to the past in order to help Raimon stop Eldorado's plan. Faye becoming the leader of the penultimate team of Feta, doing as a team led by Tenma, which is where I think Faye and Tenma's relationship really shines, where the true themes of this series reveal themselves. Throughout this entire match, Faye is trying to convince himself that his time with Raimon meant nothing. Sakura is just a tool to show the power of the second stage children and nothing else. But he knows that's not true. Through going through all these different time periods and meeting these different people, Faye sees that Sakura, the thing that led him to being this freak of nature in society and his own family. Something that's fun and connects people together. Tenma is a perfect representation of this, because regardless of how Faye changed, because they play soccer on that field, he knows he's a good guy that just needs help. Sakura connecting people so much that Faye is able to get his family back, and Kanako's revealed to be his mom as a child, a plan arranged by his dad, who regretted leaving his son behind so much that he played along with a little terrorist in order to keep him safe. Sakura, that he protected simply to benefit his race, gave him people who truly cared about him. A journey that almost wouldn't work without those random matches across different time periods, where he saw that even wars or personal beefs could be settled with the power of this game. I mean, it would work even better if he were relevant for half of them, but you get what I'm saying. Also, I wanted to say Kanako is a fun character, how she's pretty much a massive airhead, which makes the sharp twist of her relationship with Faye all the more interesting and surprising. It's just sadly way more for Faye's benefit as a character than their own. Also, a 14-year-old girl learning that she'll eventually die in childbirth is probably the most messed up thing that happened in the show, but apparently she gets better. Oh yeah, Victory Road finally got released, and the Chrono mode is basically a sequel to this season, so we see older versions of these guys, including the dude I want to give special attention to, Xanark Avalonic, the king of hype moments and order himself. He's the guy who's fused with a little tornado I mentioned earlier in the video. Bro's just here to get stronger and look really cool while doing it. But the guy calls himself Super Xanark once he hits his Mickey Max. How can he not be a highlight of this show? I also do kind of like his arc of learning that the strength he seeks can only be gained by truly having fun with soccer instead of following the whims of either El Dorado or the Six Stage Children. But I'd be allowed to say I care about that more than the fact that he's cool and probably has the best Mickey Max for him. He actually has two. In the first one we see allows him to summon another Keshin. Again! Why couldn't Taio use his other Keshin in the anime? It would have been cool and given him more screen time, but screw me, I guess. Now talk about the Tenma-faced monkey in the room. I think Saru's a really good main villain, and as much as Faye is part of why I think the final arc of Chrono Stones is really good, the main reason is that he looks like Tenma. And that plays directly into his character. His revolution against El Dorado, similar to Tenma's against Fifth Sector, as is guided by his companion's belief and faith in him. Even before we get him to, become a better person by being him in a match, you got Faye talking about how trustworthy he is. From flashbacks, it's obvious that he considered him a friend. Same way he considers Tenma his friend now. Which is interesting because Saru doesn't believe in the idea of friendship. Think of it as a human concept that he's above, as one of the second stage children. As we see with Faye, that's just not true at all. Instead, something Saru is doing to retaliate against the people who oppressed him and his people for so long. Something that Tenma gets him to see through soccer. A man who literally looks exactly like him is only able to play so well because he has friends. So how is Saru above that? This brought home even more by the fact that his teammates tell him that the reason they follow him is that they're friends. At the end of the match, Saru asks Tenma if he could be his friend, and Tenma tells him, you don't make that decision. It just happens or it doesn't. And if Saru, despite his insistence that he didn't have any, he's obviously made a lot of friends. And I think that's a nice thing to end the show on. Again, soccer is not this tool for war or battle. It's something that connects people. And Saru had already done that so much. But he took his doppelganger from the past, or his descendant in the anime is a little weird about that. It's pretty more obvious in the game apparently. For Saru to realize he has friends, he has a reason to keep on going beyond just fighting against El Dorado. Sadly, I do kind of take umbrage with how they treat El Dorado and all this. The twist that the Shadow organization isn't all that bad. Interesting for a sequel to go, but at least the show downplaying the second stage children's plight. We're not supposed to think everything El Dorado does is right necessarily, but it's still weird that at the end of the show, we're siding with a group that was trying to make a minority group not exist, alongside having a policy that any employee who has a child that happens to be one of the second stage children needs to abandon that child to keep working there. That's why Faye's dad abandoned him, by the way. Then there's the fact that the show all ends up having a pro-eugenics message, kinda, because they establish that half the reason the second stage children hate humanity outside of the oppression is that they are genetically predisposed to die at 20, and the only way to fix that is to have their powers taken away. That's the only way for them to survive and integrate into society, to stop being who they are. This writing isn't great no matter how you look at it. The show says that having this change forcing them is bad, but at the same time, it's just a weird plot point, especially when all the stuff with Saru humanizing himself and trying to fight back into humanity worked about as well without bringing low-key race science talking points into it, or while being way more critical of El Dorado than the show allows itself to be. In the end though, Chrono Stone was probably my least favorite season of Inazuma 11 so far, but even then I still liked it. Even though a good majority of the show is a bunch of repetitive storylines that don't get to really go anywhere, they're still at least somewhat fun to watch for the most part. And the final arc with Faye and Saru helps us boost the quality of the season a lot overall personally. personally. Like, I think like the core problem is that like stuff like Mixie Max and Catch and Arm and the time travel plot probably is really gas when you're playing the video game, but in the anime, it's a little it felt like they struggled a lot more than they had before. But I still had fun though sometimes, certainly the ending, like I said. Next time we'll be talking about the final season of Go, and for 5 years the final season of Inazuma 11 in general. Inazuma 11 Go Galaxy. Until then though, Migas Clovis signing out.